from the adjourned agenda forum this evening, and we are on questions to staff from councillors. Councillors, are there any further questions for staff? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, my next one we'll move on to is 14.3.1, which is the proposed educational establishment. Through you to the relevant staff, when a strata property is involved, is there a requirement that when you submit your application or whatever they do, that you have to get the approval of the owners, and as such, would that require the strata approval? And if it is, obviously we haven't got it. Does that mean we can't deal with this item?
I'll ask Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, the short answer is that the requirement for the consent of the strata body on a development application only extends where the development application is proposing works on the common property, not within what would be the exclusive use of the strata units involved. So the short answer there is no. We haven't got the strata owner's consent to the application, and that's not required.
Thank
So
you.
my next follow-up question is, when someone in a strata is proposing to rezone or have a different use as opposed to doing works, is that required?
Mr. Russell.
The same answer is no, not the instance of the development application.
The next question, Madam Mayor, on the same item, are staff aware, or can it be confirmed, is the proposed educational establishment not a proposed educational establishment and it's already established or part started, albeit not all students going there, and as such, would this not then be a retrospective?
Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Short answer is no. I'm not aware of whether or not the educational establishment has started at any part on the lots in question. We can certainly inquire of the proponent.
Further question?
So, Madam Mayor, we'll get an update on that, and not necessarily from the proponent, but staff actually checking, because it's easy for anyone to say yes or no, as opposed to what I've been advised.
Through the chair, we'll have a look, and once we've done a verification, send information to council members.
Madam Mayor, my next question on this same item, I'm trying to get my head around why staff are recommending approval when it appears a major issue is no drop-off or pick-up area. Why is that considered not important for this item?
Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the first instance here, we've considered what is the size of this school. It's not a full-blown state government high school. The numbers there are in the order of about something like 88 students. So the scale of it's a lot smaller. The applicant hasn't provided any indication of a formalised pick-up and drop-off area. Obviously, they're only dealing with 3 private lots. It's quite clear they couldn't facilitate a pick-up and drop-off area within their strata lots. They would have to utilise the common property area for such a purpose. So what the applicant has done, however, in terms of maybe addressing issues with respect to the nominal shortfall in parking on site, is that they've indicated 2 things. One in relation to the availability of parking in the area, and instead of a pick-up and drop-off at the school location, they have proposed instead a facility, as it says in the report, to utilise a pick-up and drop-off service from the Ellenbrook train station to and from the school site. So it's they can't provide a pick-up and drop-off within their strata lots, clearly. So the alternative here is, to the extent it might be required, is to make a facility for a pick-up and drop-off bus service from the train station to the school.
Madam Mayor, the recently adopted cash in lieu for Ellenbrook, is that only in the town centre, and as such we can't actually ask for the significant shortfall to be provided in cash so we can actually do something?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it's to the town centre.
Madam Mayor, through to the Engineering Director, a informal pick-up and drop-off on a road, off road parking bay, or on the side of the road parking bay, is there any concern with the safety of other users of the road?
Staff, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Bowman, can you please repeat that one?
Yep, so we just heard through you, Madam Mayor, that there's been no proposed pick-up and drop-off bay. We've been heard from those deputations there's not enough car parking. So the only alternative is a potentially informal pick-up and drop-off from one of the bays or two of the bays that are actually just on the road. From an engineering point of view, having up to, I think it was 90 plus students potentially getting picked up on the side of the road, are there any concerns from an engineering point of view to other road users?
If that scenario does occur, which you mentioned, there would be some concerns, but I understand that there are other methods that they're looking in terms of the pick up and drop off of the children. But if that does occur, which with what you said, yes, there would be some concern.
Madam Mayor, the next one, and the Manager of Planning said it's not a state government school. Can he explain, because obviously with a state government school, high schools, primary schools, certain sizes, you've got to have an outdoor area where they go have recess or play or do whatever they do in high school these days. That's not the case for private institutions, am I correct?
Mr Russell?
Through Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct.
And is there anything that we should be looking at or can look at, considering there's quite a big difference of having no space and not even room to bounce the basketball, as opposed to other schools having to have ovals and all that?
Mr Russell?
I'm struggling with the question, Madam Mayor. I'll answer it as best as I understand the way it's been put. I think the question Councillor Bowman is suggesting is, and which I've partly answered, is there's not a nominal requirement for that applies to government schools where you might provide facilities for sport. Clearly, this location can't provide such a facility. And I'm not that familiar at all with the educator here, as I understand their business, is that they provide an alternative to schooling through the normal state or private education system for students that might have special needs or requirements or circumstances that affected them in government schools, completing courses in government schools or the like. It almost infers that it might be something in the way of a preparatory environment. But suffice to say is we're not looking at the requirements that apply through state planning policy for the provision of government school sites. The same with private school sites. A private school can choose to provide an oval or not, and there's no laws that govern that it needs to provide X or Y types of facilities. So in this instance here, there is none. They couldn't provide anything. It's not a requirement, and we need to treat the application on its relevant merits, not on other considerations that are not directly relevant.
Thank you, Mr Russell. Further question?
Madam Mayor, is it a requirement that we should be looking at from a planning point of view, and it's probably just too practical, that if the school kids are going from 9 to 2 Monday to Saturday, you've got 4, I've got 4, we both know they have morning recess, lunch, whatever else they call it these days, without any space for them to actually have that, is that something that should have been addressed in the planning application, or that's just something that we don't worry about, too bad, too sad, that's how they operate, and we don't need to worry about that?
I'll ask Mr Russell if you're able to respond.
I think the answer provided to the previous question says as much that yes, it's not a relevant consideration here.
So, follow-on question from that, if it's not a relevant planning consideration, when do we consider it if, for example, in this situation, they're going to have 90-something children from year 7 to year 12 that are going to be taking lunch break, we'll just say lunch break. When do we consider, or who should consider, or not our problem, when they find out that they've got nowhere to have lunch, they'll go sit on the sidewalk or out in the vacant car parking bay, which won't be vacant. So we just not a local government issue.
Mr. Russell.
The school has its operational hours. How the school manages what students do on the breaks or within the school, like all schools, is the school's business. It's not our business, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Bowman, have you got a
Matt,
further question?
Yep, I'll go on to 14.4.1. Coolamont Oval. I asked the question about what sporting groups. Am I right that in the answer it was actually wrong in the report? There is only 2 sporting groups: Swan Valley Little Athletics and Allenbrook Easterns. The other ones are community booking. So,
Thank you, Sid.
Through the chair, yeah, then you are correct. Then there are the 2 sporting groups, but the casual bookings were considered another group to be considered.
and Madam Mayor, the ranking, not for the lights, for the other part, Coolamont first, then EDOS second. But I understand EDOS has been promised both state and federal money, and it's conditional on getting some more grant funding. If that's the case, why was the priority put the other way around?
Mr. Jackbiner, thank you.
I'm happy to come back to the first piece. So through,
Okay, Mr. CEO.
So through the chair, EDOS is not necessarily conditional on getting additional grant funding. The original proposal we'd sought through our advocacy plan was a one-third contribution, which we received. That is 2.5 million from the state, 2.5 million election promise from the federal government. We have the state grant agreement yet, not the federal grant agreement, and the city would put in the balance, 2.5 million. That's what the facility's been designed to. However, this opportunity, having checked, my staff have checked with the department, those arrangements didn't prohibit us from being able to ask for a CSRF grant, which is the only reason that this is sitting in the agenda mix. However, looking at it in terms of the priority for the 2, given that we already have a very large contribution coming from the state and federal government, toss the coin for probability. We want to make sure we get something out of this CSR, which is then why we've gone for Coolamon. The user groups for Coolamon are more significant in terms of the overall numbers, and that's my understanding on it. And Mr. Jacquina might be add some further context.
So just a follow-up question, and I'm going to disagree with, respectfully, Mr. CEO. The numbers aren't more at Coolamont than they are at EDOS. EDOS club numbers are significantly larger. I know those clubs well, having found a home for Allenbrook Easterns when they were homeless for 2 years. So I asked the question about how we rank the priorities, and was it just on the condition and that, and I got told no. Can we get some further information to show how that's actually done? We've got like what criteria they are, but is there a weighting on the numbers? So for example, if we've got a project that's going to cost $1 million and it's got 40 users, and we've got a project that costs $3 million and it's got 500 users there, surely the second one would be a bigger priority because it's a benefit to more of our residents and ratepayers. So perhaps if we can get that provided.
Thank you, Mr. Jacquina.
Through the chair, there is no, I guess, formula for it, but staff do consider each of those attributes. And when you look at the Coolamont Pavilion, condition is one of them, as we mentioned beforehand. And the condition of the Coolamont Pavilion is worse off compared to the EDOS. So that was also in that consideration as well.
Okay.
Just note, if I could too, in terms of risk analysis, where we get to there's only, I think 16 million, or roughly 16 million of the whole fund, the whole of the state for these things. So if we put a project up and it doesn't get up, they don't come back to our second best guess. And I said, as we've already got significant, $5 million, two-thirds, so 2/3 of the funding already for EDOS. Part of this is a risk assessment. Do you want something, or do you want to put the risk of something more but get nothing?
Any further on this question? On this, no? I might just, cross over. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll have to take us back to 14.3.1. In the report, it says that the shared parking is communal parking. My first question is, the shared parking, can it be partitioned or allocated to individual strata owners? And if so, is this a matter of strata title, or is it something that can only be done by planning?
Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In short, as you heard from the strata chair, that the bays are not allocated for the exclusive use of any of the strata lots, so they are communal shared bays. It is up to the strata group, the strata body, through its bylaws to decide whether it wants to move to an arrangement to make certain bays for the exclusive use of certain strata lots. So the gentleman talked about the question of equity in the allocation of bays. That is purely the strata body to determine within its own bylaws by its strata members how it wishes to divide up the allocation of bays within its common property area.
Okay, thank you. In that case, then I'm looking at the recommendation. I'm looking at recommendation 5. Parking is to be in accordance with the approved parking management plan, and the parking management plan must be implemented at all times to the satisfaction of the City of Swan. So how would a parking management plan for this this school apply to a communal area? It would have to apply to other owners as well as the owners of the school strata units. How would that work?
Mr. Russell.
The salient parts of the parking management plan are in relation to, for example, what facilities that the school will provide by way of, principally by way of the shuttle bus service. Now, we might have said that we might have said, if we wanted to be more specific, the proponent is to make provision for a shuttle bus service accommodating X number of seats to be to and from the train station to the school 3 times daily. So it's principally in relation to that, rather than you get this bay or you get that bay.
Further question?
Yeah, those are all my questions on 14.3.1. I'll let another councillor have a go now.
And Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. On the same 14.3.1. Just for me to be clear, all the purple spots on the map are car parking bays. Are they expected to be utilised by people coming and going with their kids?
Mr. Russell.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. What the documentation accompanying the application is endeavouring to show with respect to, in the first instance, the nominal parking shortfall, is that there are, whilst they've only got 7 bays on site, and our scheme standard would say a bay for every teacher, that's 16 bays, and 1 bay per X number of Year 12 students, which adds under the scheme a requirement for 1 more bay, 17 bays. So they've got 7 on site, so they're still short 10 nominally for 1 Year 12 student that might drive, and the rest of the staff. So they've indicated here that within the communal common property area of available bays and within the broader area, in the locations depicted in these plans, that there is some 92 odd bays, and they've troubled themselves to do a nominal survey as to the take-up rate and availability of those bays throughout various parts of the period in which they did the survey. So they're suggesting that teachers, which will be the ones that will predominantly drive and park, there is available parking bays in the area for the teachers to utilise. Now, it is possible, of course, if these bays on street, they're not as far as I'm aware, they're not bays that are restricted in terms of hours or times or requires tickets. If they're generally unrestricted bays, then there's nothing to prevent a parent dropping off a child or picking up a child from pulling into one of those bays and parking for a pick up and drop off. So it can be used by both people seeking to park all day, such as teachers, and or parties dropping children off or picking them up by parking in those bays to undertake that function.
Okay, so what I was really coming to is that would staff recognise that Coolamon Boulevard is actually a bit of a spine road through the area and has a reasonable amount of traffic? Surely having people traversing across the road to the other side, particularly if there's any younger people involved, would be a hazard or a risk?
Through you, Madam Mayor, as I said, there are on-street bays throughout this location. So it's like anything else, I suppose. If you're a road user, you need to follow the road rules and drive responsibly. So the question is to where people drop these students off and how the students then, how close they are to school, or how they get there. Like anything else, they'll need to undertake, due caution. Ultimately, I suppose, in terms of the options that might be taken will depend on the users. If they think it's more convenient to drop them at the train station and utilise the bus service, then that will be provided. Otherwise, there's other public transport that students may well use. The report talks about the bus services through the area, depending on where these students are coming from. They might catch the bus, or as I say, they might be dropped off. So there is a mixture there that the report says that they find that will be available for the transportation of students to this proposed school. It doesn't necessarily follow, even though the report paints a worst case scenario in terms of traffic volumes, but it doesn't necessarily follow that every student will be driven, picked up and dropped off at the school. So the question is to how much traffic we're going to get. The report's indicated about in a peak period of 104 trips in the peak period or less, and in point of fact, in relation to a road traffic assessment, that's at the low end of the threshold where basically the road network, that's not a problem for the road network. So we're not talking about volumes that are presenting an issue with respect to traffic management on the road network.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Cynic in me says that if a planner works out how to get the numbers to work, X number come by train and by bus, and the practice does otherwise. But in any case, my real concern is that perhaps if my grandchildren were ever to go there, I'd have to make sure that they understood the road rules and didn't run across and get splattered by a car. I'd be wondering to see if the ward councillor is going to do something with this, but I find that there's a lot of risk involved, I think.
Okay. Councillors, further questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My house is the second house from this college, which is already operational.
Down a bit there.
This college, which is already operational. Parking in the area is at premium every single day around this area. There are 2 doctor's surgeries, not one, a dental surgery that's just open, and many other allied health things. You never see bays open in this area. I'd like to know where they got that survey of bays available. The second thing that I'd just like to query is accidents at this intersection occur frequently. The roundabout has been changed already due to the accidents. Mr. Coaten can vouch for this. It would be very interesting, and I'm talking about accidents where the cars end up in the property that's on the corner. So, yeah, I just thought I'd raise those.
No, thank you very much for that. Councillors, any further questions for staff? Who spoke last? We'll go back to Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I've got quite a few on 14.4.3, as probably most would expect, but
Well, I'll just check. Maybe Councillor Johnson hasn't got many. Do you want to go?
Summarise in 2.
Right. Thank you for that addition. Just to clarify.
So, Madam Mayor, the 2 questions that will probably answer most things for me, through you to the CEO, when we were having workshops on this, one of the things we were going to do was have a briefing from Dwyer prior to this item coming. And Dwyer was going to give us a briefing on certain things. Those certain things, I believe, weren't a marketing tool of FOGO and what FOGO was about, but it was the future directions that may be incurred. Is that correct?
CEO?
Through the chair, the intent was to have Dwyer come and talk to you, and you have the engagement opportunity with them. Noting that I wasn't at your briefing session, I don't know in the end what was discussed, what questions you asked, etc. But the Dwyer officers did turn up, and as far as I understand, you have the opportunity to ask them questions. Now, whether they answered all your questions satisfactorily or not, they were there, which is exactly the thing the city said it would arrange.
So my understanding, because it was a good CEO response, that probably didn't answer my question, but was I correct that the advice that the CEO said was, we'll get to her along and they will be able to brief you on the future requirements and whether there will be the state government will come and put the big stick out and we will have to do FOGO. Not quite in those words, you used a lot more better to explain it, but that's how I picked it up. Was that how I understood to be correct?
I could say, Councillor Bowman, in your CEO role, that you might have to improve your hearing onto these things rather than put your councillor role on and selectively choose the information. So Dwyer were invited along with the intention to brief you on their position on FOGO, but also hopefully give you some information where I hope the state waste strategy was going. As I said, I wasn't at the briefing, so I don't know what questions you asked, etc. We do know the state waste strategy, which was due for a release later on this year, will come back, and as far as I understood from the Dwyer presentation, they'd indicated the FOGO remains the key objective of the state. Right, if that information is what was communicated to you, that is my clear understanding as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to the CEO, and I'm pretty sure I had my listening ears on with the Dwyer briefing, and they really didn't mention anything of that, and the questions I did ask they couldn't answer. My final question on FOGO, because I said it was only two, so that was part A and B. Have I understood it right? With everything that we've gone out to the community, those have got FOGO, those are coming up with FOGO, the stats, and whether you want to put the stats one way to argue a case that staff want, or I put it the other way where I read it. Am I reading it right that the recommendation after all of that that's come back to council is, we're not really listening, we're going to continue the exact same, rolling out, but hey, if there's people that have a bit of a whinge, we can change their size. Am I getting that, or otherwise, are we actually changing the option? Because it doesn't look like that to me, or if I completely misread this report.
CEO?
Through the chair, and I note, if I could just get Councillor Jones to turn her microphone off.
Sorry.
Without wanting to put individuals use the word spin on the outcome, no, we have gone to the community, all of the people who've received the FOGO service and all those who are due to receive the FOGO service, and asked them for their view. Those views came back and looked at the service, and I note that we had to actually push to go and try and get a response. Now, in many cases, you could say if people were vehemently against something, they would have overwhelmingly written back to you and said, in huge numbers, don't provide this. And I'd note too, is that people were vehemently against this, you would have continued to receive hundreds and hundreds of emails and complaints, etc. Say, don't provide this. But that's not the case. What they have said is that when they've got the FOGO service, the one thing that's caused most consideration for them has been the issue and the flexibility of the bin size. Now, we know that you can't provide both an MSW service and a FOGO service on a weekly basis. To do that would significantly increase the waste levy for households, significantly. You would also not have enough room in the depot for all the vehicles and the staff you would need. You'd need to acquire another property. So the provision of a waste service, the same as everybody else who has a FOGO service, where FOGO is delivered and collected weekly, removing all the organics, including your putrid food organics, but that you could have then a bin size for your residual waste, which is the smallest component of your household waste, as an option that says, I want a large bin or I want a small bin. You could even, with a future household where there's only, say you've got a 180 square metre lot with no garden, so well, we'd really like a small green bin. Do that. Giving people that flexibility is what the staff have realised that people are asking for. And if I could note, that's not the flexibility that's provided for in the grant agreement. The grant agreement with the state government was premised on us only using a 140 litre bin for the red bin. Now, we've said to the state, that's not the feedback our residents have said to us, those who've complained about bin size. They want that, and to provide that, we're also saying to you, look, go back and rebate those who've already paid that additional cost. So giving residents freedom and flexibility on bin sizes is a substantive change from what we're doing now, but not changing direction on the core service because there wasn't an overwhelming objection to it.
So
That's what I read in the report, Councillor Bowman.
So, Madam Mayor, my apologies. I fell asleep after the second word there.
Councillor Bowman,
Madam Mayor,
can we just ask the question, please?
Madam Mayor, the question, I'll rephrase the question because perhaps the CEO didn't get what I was referring to, because nowhere were we saying pick up the FOGO, GO and municipal waste both weekly, because we understand, hopefully everyone understands the cost. But Madam Mayor, if I look at the report, 59% said of those who've got FOGO or getting FOGO, that is the worst option. Option 2, which was to increase the bin size, which is not being proposed. So am I correct that the officers are recommending we stick with option 1?
Mr CEO.
No, you're not correct. Officers are recommending that we continue delivery of FOGO service with a flexible combination of bin sizes for residents. That is not what we're currently doing now. And giving residents on an individual personalised basis the opportunity to have a smaller or larger green or red bin will give them the flexibility and overcome what was a principal series of objections, and that is, how much room have I got to dispose my residual waste?
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I've got a FOGO question, and I actually sent my question in advance because I knew it would cause difficulties, and I don't understand the answer, frankly. Did you?
Not that I'm aware of.
So, yes, it went to all council members, so the answer went out. So, anyway, I'll start from the beginning. So the question is, in 24-25, the waste charge for the 3-bin FOGO service was $491. In 23-24, the waste charge pre-FOGO was $452. If we had not intended to roll out FOGO in 2024-25, approximately what would the waste charge have been in 2024-25? What I mean by that is, in the absence of the project, what would the waste charge have gone up by between 2023-24 to 2024-25? Would it have gone up by CPI, or would it have gone up by more than that? And if so, how much approximately and why? That's what I'm trying to ask, because the answer doesn't give me an answer to that question. It says, had no service been introduced, the waste levy would have been approximately the same. But is that the same as $452 or the same as $491? I can't work it out.
So to make it clear, because I included the infographic,
That
which
didn't
shows
help either.
that there was no difference between the 2-bin or 3-bin system, the cost escalation would have applied regardless. So you'd still end up with the cost of $491. So the difference between having a 2-bin or a 3-bin system, this is something we put out to residents last year when people were saying, you know, you're charging a waste service levy for me or for us, and we don't have a third bin. But there is fundamentally no real difference. I think it's about $4 from memory, $4 difference between the two. Now, as not everyone would get the bin service on day one, and not everyone are going to get the bin service in year one, the fact that they're so close in proximity, it's easier just to standardise the cost.
Right. So
As we go forward, the thing that will vary this cost is, for instance, will the cost of FOGO processing, if we continue to have to do it through the EMRC, substantively increase or not? That'll be the only thing that will really drive the two differences between it. And then finally, for the residual waste for all residents, what will be the transport costs additional to get the waste down to waste to energy?
Okay, right. So first of all, the infographic is not very clear, and it is generating an enormous amount of questions. So the question that people are asking me is why? So the question is, why is a 2-bin system costing the same as a 3-bin system? Or it's only $4 in difference. Well, this shows both, if I read it the way you're explaining it, both would be $491. But why is the 3-bin system costing the same as a 2-bin system? Yet between the 2 years, there was a $50 difference, which is more than CPI. I don't understand it. What other factor has changed to make it go up by so much? No, I'm asking
give
what would
me a minute to bring up, because I thought that infographic, and I've responded to so many emails today, that infographic includes, which it does. If you look at the cost of the 2-bin and 3-bin system, it breaks the cost down into what is the cost for recycling the product, what is the cost for general waste, what is the cost for collection of FOGO, what's the cost of under each component. It also says what's the processing cost under each component. All of those add up to $255 for a 2-bin system and $259 for the 3-bin system. So all those cost components are broken down on the infographic. So you ask questions. With the 3-bin system, you have an additional vehicle. You've got additional staff. You have a slightly lower cost for processing of FOGO compared to the general waste. But remember, it's also collected on a different cycle to that. So the information is there in the infographic, and it's the same one we sent out last year in terms of queries for residents.
But what we're trying to understand is why has it gone up by so much? So if you're saying that the 3-bin system is going to cost the same as the 2-bin system, so between 24-25 and 23-24, it went up by about $40. So $40 is 10% and not the rate of inflation 3%. So what people want to know is why has it gone up by so much?
So that question though relates to cost escalation from year to year, not so much the difference between the two. And as would have been explained when Council adopted its cost for that year, and I'm sorry I can't recall that off the top of my head, landfill levy went up, so the state government's charge for disposal went up considerably. So you're paying more to dispose of the product. You would have also had a general wage cost increase, but I suspect landfill levy was the primary cost driver of that. So you pay more for the cost for fuel, you pay more, which went up roughly that year by about 8%, because we had a big spike in fuel prices. You had some labour cost increases, about 5%. Bearing in mind you have both the wage cost movement and then you have the issues for superannuation guarantee. But the biggest cost driver would have been the cost of disposal. And we don't control that. That's controlled by the costs implied by the state and by the MRC.
So in explaining this to the community, and this is the question we are being asked relentlessly, why am I paying so much more for a 3-bin service when I've only got 2 bins? And they want to know, well, why did it go up by so much? We're saying it is caused by the landfill levy. So how much did the landfill levy go up by? That's really what we need to be telling people, not sending them an infographic. So how much did it go up by? Does anybody know?
So with respect, these questions aren't related to the issue of FOGO service.
They are, because we are being overwhelmed with questions about this. It is the largest single set of subject questions I'm getting. And I'm looking at how I would move an alternate motion to deal with this. So I do need to have this answer. So if you're telling me that there's a rational reason why it's gone up from 452 to 491, and that is caused by the landfill levy increasing, what I would like to know is how much has it gone up by?
So through the chair, there is possibility to give you a breakdown. Mr. Jacqueline might be able to do that off the top of your head. But these costs relate to cost escalations as a whole for the service. What we've said to you is when you look at the cost of a 2 or the 3 bin system, they are approximately the same. So regardless of what you're doing, this item is about the continuation of the FOGO service, not about the waste service as a whole. And I'm happy to provide the information you're seeking.
yeah.
Whether we provide it tonight, Mr. Giacovino, or we provide it subsequently, that information can be provided.
Do you want to add a comment? Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, then I can answer how much landfill went up. So in 23-24, the levy rate per tonne was $70. In 24-25, that went up to $85. So it increased by $15, which is the substantial value there.
$70 to $85.
I thought it was 88.
So through here, it's 70. So 88 is for 25-26.
So it went up from $70 to $88 in 1 year, is that right?
Just want to repeat those 3 dates again.
yeah,
So
sorry, through the
23, 24.
Yeah, so for 23-24, the landfill rate per tonne was $70. 24-25, $85. 25-26, $88.
88. Okay, so the big change is between 23-24 and 24-25, and that's basically accounting for it. Okay.
So, on
So
top,
that is the explanation that needs to be given to people who are saying, my rates notice says that I've got a 3 bin system, but for the whole of 24-25, I only had a 2 bin system, and the amount I'm paying has gone up by, what was that, $42. So that is the question that is being asked relentlessly by our community using the medium that they use most often these days, which is Facebook. So we've got to be able to explain that. Otherwise, we're going to have to give them the money back. And I guess the next question then is, why is it that when people ring the City of Swan, and they do, and I've several people have told me this, they ask, why am I paying so much more for a 3 bin system when I've only got a 2 bin system? They're being told, oh, that's a typographical error, or that's a mistake. That is being told relentlessly by the people on the call centre. So why is that happening? Can't we
through
just
the chair,
give the correct explanation?
if you can give us the specific examples, the individuals who've rung in, we'll verify the information provided for rather than deal with it as a hearsay type issue at this particular meeting.
Well, it's not hearsay,
just
Mr.
saying-
Sear, because I'm telling you, this is what they're telling me. It's not hearsay, it's a fact. I
Appreciate
wouldn't be
this.
raising it here if it wasn't factual.
This is what people are possibly saying to you, Deputy Mayor, but if you can give us the names of the individual, we'll go back and verify what was said to them. However, to be quite clear, the cost you've seen for the 2 and 3 bid system is comparable, which is the same thing we provided council members last year. So in you looking at that, it's not the issue of FOGO that's increasing the costs. The cost of service delivery, and where Mr. Giacovino has mentioned landfill disposal, on top of that, we get all the processing costs from the EMRC, and what if they moved their fees by? We were obliged to accept them. So we'll give you a breakdown of what cost escalation has occurred based on the mix of costs we get, knowing that your cost in the waste levy, the cost in the waste charge is not just the cost of your MSW disposal, but it's your FOGO disposal, and it's also the cost of recycling and whatever the recycler was charging us for disposal at that time too.
So what I've heard is that the increase in landfill levy between 23-24 and 24-25 was 21%. So that is quite a good explanation of why people's bin charge has gone up by, what is it? I think it was 8%. So that's a rational explanation. What we need to be able to give people is a rational explanation. The infographic doesn't do that. It doesn't explain the change from year to year. And the reason it's gone up by so much is caused by the landfill levy and by other costs as well. So can we get an infographic that explains that?
Through the chair, your original question was about whether we deliver the service or not. That's why we gave you the answer, which was, regardless of whether we had applied a 2 or a 3 bin system, the cost increase would have been the same. And we've given you the infographic which shows how the costs add up. Happy to give you a breakdown of the issues that relate to your waste service levy as a whole. And as Mr. Giacovino and I've said tonight, the primary driver of that has been the state government's landfill levy, which is all about behavioural change. That's what they're trying to achieve through this. And you know it's going to have further cost and behavioural change. And that's one of the reasons we've highlighted, if I could just make this point in this whole issue, our intended disposal for waste to energy, which is what we're committed to and we will be going to as soon as the plant is operational. Currently, none of the waste going onto the waste to energy plant attracts a waste levy, currently. However, the provision in the ministerial conditions for that, and ministerial approval 1093, was that only residual waste, that is waste which has gone through a better practice system, which is FOGO, is allowed for disposal. So one of the tools still open for the state government in all of this is to come back and apply the waste levy to any component of the fraction of the waste that has not yet gone through a better practice system, which is one reason the waste operators, so for instance, the recyclers are not allowed to take down any just general recycling and dump it into to the waste system. They have to only take residual waste, which is fractions of stuff that people can't recycle. Similarly, the organic providers and the C&D providers aren't allowed to take their product down there unless it has gone through a source separation process.
Look, I think it's understood, but there's a lot of people out there wanting to get that answer in a clear, simple way. So if we get an infographic that shows how it changed from year to year, that would be useful. I don't think it'd be that difficult. I can work out how to do it myself, but it's really up to the city to do that.
Do we have a further question?
Not about FOGO.
Okay. Councillors, is anyone else who hasn't had a question tonight who would like to ask a question? Questions for staff? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, my next question is about 4.3.3 Morella Road. So I'd just like to, through you, Madam Mayor, to the planning staff, look at page 351 in the agenda. And when reading this item, I'm asking myself a question: how should I vote in order to maximise the opportunity to provide housing stock in the city? And secondly, how is that affected by the need to retain Banksia woodlands and other habitats for, say, black cockatoos and other fauna? So when I'm looking at that top paragraph on page 351, I was thinking, is this my low point on council ever? So I'm reading this and I'm going, it says, noting council's previous intention to retain Banksia woodlands on the site, okay, get that bit, it may be considered that only if vegetation is removed pursuant to the mining approvals should it be excluded from the environmental consideration protection. I don't understand that. Once I get past the comma, I'm afraid I don't get what it means. What does it mean when it says mining should it be excluded from environmental consideration? Does that mean that the vegetation that would have been removed anyway? I don't get it. So what are we trying to protect?
From staff there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Russell?
No, through you, Madam Mayor. So the Deputy Mayor's, or what that sentence is saying, or that paragraph is saying, and I'll be the first to maybe suggest it maybe could have been put in a better fashion. The council's previously said that it's keen to see the retention of Banksia woodland. What has become apparent in this report and articulated in this report as distinct from maybe other considerations of Banksia woodland in relation to this location under the district structure plan is that the EPA has advised that the ministerial statement that pertains to the sand mining gives, in essence, these are my words, a carte blanche to clear. So certainly what would happen there is that if you then pursued, for example, an urban deferred arrangement, say instead of sand mining, noting that the Banksia woodland has already been authorised by the ministerial statement to be cleared, there is the potential in the development of a structure plan over that area that you might have areas of existing vegetation that have not otherwise been mined, retained into street verges or public open space. So it's recognised, rather than pursuing the sand mining instead of the extractive industry, you might have an opportunity to retain some of the Banksia woodland. But What wasn't clear when this report was submitted, this is the report from the department, the MRS report was submitted, is that the proponent, and this is what this report endeavours to articulate at some length, what the landowners are actually proposing to do is what I term concurrent sand mining and urban development. And their model is to clear vegetation, mine the sand, extract all the sand they need from that particular location, return the levels to a level that would be fit for the civil construction of a subdivision, and then develop the subdivision. So it may well be in relation to that all of the Banksia woodland in the urban deferred area may well be mined first and then developed. So what this report does indicate is the bit at the top there, which is not subject to the urban deferred, the BNX, and this is in the resolution recommendation to council, that be retained as Banksia woodland and not be transferred to urban deferred, because that's not subject to the sand mining tenement. So that's part of what is in the recommendation, and that point is also noted by the EPA, that the area that's outside of the sand mining tenement, the ministerial statement, could be retained for Banksia woodland. So you'll get a bit that's not subject to the sand mining tenement that could be retained.
So that's kind of what I understood. It's quite interesting you explaining the concurrency of the sand mining operation and the urban deferred. So they can use the sand mining operation to destroy as much of the vegetation as possible and then replace it with urban development. But here's the question. Which part of that Banksia woodland or other valuable flora is going to be retained? And if I look at page 348, I can see there's a green area there. Is that the green area that is going to be retained in its natural state, or is it going to be turned into sort of council-style parkland?
Through you, Madam Mayor, certainly on page 348, which is the district structure plan amendment map, it is depicting open space.
Yeah.
So the question around open space is it open space that will largely be retained bushland or developed for recreational facilities of passive type or a combination of both. The document, that district structure plan, doesn't go into that level of detail. That would be something that the local structure plan, if it was to advance, if this land was to go to urban deferred, that'd be something that we would drill down to and look at.
Okay, so that would be, so the protection of Banksia woodland in that green area, if there is Banksia woodland in that green area, and that's the difficult part to understand because we don't have a report on that. That could be protected at a later stage of planning. Is that right? Did I hear that correctly?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I go to the recommendation, okay, and if I take you to recommendation 1.2, what we're suggesting here is that, and I'll read it, Madam Mayor, the city expects that the native vegetation of those portions of the land not otherwise subject to the above instruments, that's the sand mining tenement, the ministerial statement, be substantially retained and protected through any subsequent planning processes should the amendment proceed. So that would include, and that can include that highlighted green area in the district structure plan, if that's intended to be retained through a structure plan, then we could look at that. But certainly, I think the salient point is whatever is indicated in that district structure plan, hot off the press is the admission of the intention of the developer to have this concurrent arrangement, where they're basically saying is we're going to sand mine everything that's subject to the sand mining tenement and then put urban over the top of that. Now that, of course, if they're going to clear all of that, then you're going to clear everything other than the portion of the site, which is depicted on page 346. You can see not all of the lot is urban deferred. So that top portion, linear portion along the top, which isn't part of the sand mining tenement, whatever Banksia woodland is in that would be the bit that you'd expecting to be retained.
Oh, I see. Finally, this is what I'm trying to understand: is which part of the land can potentially be protected. So it's that part. Just if I'll just draw my. Is there any way of making it clearer in the recommendation that it's that piece of land just there that could potentially be protected? I got that right.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to assist, I think if you look at, on page 348, the green blob at the bottom of the land in question, where we've got the open space, and then if you look at page 346, you can see that some of that green blob area would fall in the top portion of the site that's not urban deferred, not subject to the sand mining tenement. So yes, that bit, as per our recommendation too, that is the opportunity for the retention of Banksia woodland.
Would it be possible then for the recommendation to be clarified to make it clear that it's that section there that is going to be protected? Is that a reasonable thing to attempt?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's entirely at the discretion of this council if it wants to provide a bit more specificity to point 2 in terms of the area that's expected to, the council expects to be retained in subsequent planning instruments. Absolutely.
It looks like it'll be the most complex alternate motion I've ever tried, because it's taken, what's it been, 15 minutes to work this out. Thank you for that, Mr. Russell. I was thinking this one's like a cryptic crossword, or I'd need bring my Enigma decoding machine to understand this one, but I finally understand it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any further questions for staff? No. Well, thank you very much to staff, to those in the gallery, to those who patiently stayed in the gallery, to those watching at home or those online. And we will close this meeting tonight at 8:57. Thank you.